This definitely was St. Louis trying to inspire us.
I've got these little scenarios that sort of boil around in my head.
This is a historic moment. We're going to do something.
Today on Spotlight, inspirational women in St. Louis and how they fought for the right to vote. Plus, WashU researches using red bricks like a battery to store energy. And then, after missing 59 concerts, the St. Louis Symphony is back. But first, in honor of All Saints Day, a local documentary about the oldest school system in Missouri. It's Sunday, and you're watching Spotlight.
They are the pride of their parents, the pride of their community, the pride of an educational system with a powerful heritage, an outstanding tradition of leadership, and a commanding vision for the future. They are the inheritors of the mission to educate. Though small in stature, their voices rise up to images of leaders who understood the power and influence of young people. Leaders who helped bring education to all children, all classes, all races, all intellectual levels. These visionary leaders began the educational mission along the Mississippi River before Missouri was a state.
It would take less than 24 hours to fly from Bordeaux, France into Lambert Airport in St. Louis today, but in 1817 that same trip took Bishop Louis William de Burgh nearly 6 months. The last leg of his journey was up the Mississippi on a steamboat. Missouri was still 3 years away from becoming a state. St. Louis was a small city of some 3,000 residents in the Louisiana Territory. But the territory's new bishop chose St. Louis and this log cabin church along the Mississippi River instead of New Orleans for his headquarters. Bishop de Burgh was an advocate of education. He had served as president of Georgetown College and on one occasion was a dinner guest of President George Washington at Mount Vernon. Bishop de Burgh came to St. Louis with big plans for the city.
It goes all the way back to 1818 when Bishop de Burgh felt if we're really going to help Catholic immigrants, if we're going to develop a strong Catholic church, we have to have a quality education system. But imagine that, 1818.
Helping him with that mission was Mother Rose Philippine Deschênes, a sister of the Society of the Sacred Heart, a religious order he recruited to come from Europe to teach in St. Louis. At the age of 49, Mother Deschênes, along with 4 other sisters, would open the first free school west of the Mississippi for girls.
Back in those days, it wasn't appropriate to even bother with any formal education for girls. The boys were very often sent to the East or even to Europe to be educated because there was nothing for them in St. Louis. And so when there was something for girls that came along, it was just a miracle.
Their efforts laid the groundwork for the oldest and largest school system in Missouri. The distinction of being one of the strongest Catholic school systems in the country came with a daunting amount of work and challenges.
Cardinal Ritter, his vision was to integrate the schools, and he did that at great personal cost to himself.
And I think that integration is surely according to the precepts of Christ, of our blessed Lord.
They faced controversy head-on.
That was a bold, bold move.
Empowered by their mission to educate all.
The Catholic educational ethic has always had that as a calling and a challenge and a mandate.
For that reason, the St. Louis Archdiocese is home to many educational firsts that communities around the nation emulated.
Yeah, we started that work here.
New challenges will surface, but just as the leaders in the past prevailed to establish this strong system, Today's leaders promise to continue the mission to educate.
They were shocked in 1818. Why would the bishop come from New Orleans, and why would he be concerned about schools? Because they were trying to survive. Well, here, the survival needs are different. It's how do we have a job, how do we keep food on the table, but it's still survival. And in the midst of that, we've got to have the same pioneering spirit and find ways to make sure that it works. You know, we're preparing leaders for the future for the church and for the nation and for the world. And it's happening here in St. Louis.
To watch the full exclusive documentary, visit hecmedia.org. Follow HEC Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. They didn't know if they would accomplish what they wanted, but they knew they had to try.
2020 marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the Women's Suffrage Amendment. Suffrage simply means the right to vote. And so until 1920, women were in Missouri denied the right to vote in any election.
Suffrage was a national movement, but many historic moments happened right here in St. Louis.
Virginia Minor is one of the women that every person in the United States should know her name, but they don't. But Virginia Minor essentially kicked off the suffrage movement in the entire country.
Honoring Virginia Minor and the bravery of other women in our city by telling their stories was the motivation behind the Missouri History Museum's new exhibit, Beyond the Ballot, St. Louis and Suffrage.
All of the artifacts and all of the sections on this side are really showing that even without the vote, that women were impacting St. Louis and really making a change in the city and really impacting the city. So these two ladies are two of my favorites, and this is a local photo. They're wearing bloomers, so they're wearing split skirts, and they decided back in 1894 that they were going to take a bicycle tour talking about the evils of corsets.
There are graphic novel-style illustrations of diverse and influential women along the wall, drawn by local female artist Rory. The second half dives deeper into the local suffrage story.
So that is a sash. That is on loan from the State Historical Society of Missouri, and it was worn at the Golden Lane Parade.
The Golden Lane Parade was unlike any parade you've ever been to. It was completely silent. It was a protest. The women all wore white and held a yellow umbrella, much like the ones you'll see at the entrance.
In 1916, the Democratic National Convention was in St. Louis. They thought, we've talked long enough. And so they made this plan where all of the delegates who are coming were staying at the Jefferson Hotel, which is still there, Jefferson Arms Hotel. And then they were going to the convention at the Coliseum, which is basically a straight shot down Locust. So the men ate their breakfast at the Jefferson Hotel and then walked to the Coliseum. And as they were walking, as you can see in this picture, there were just rows of women just standing there, silent, staring them down. What they were wanting is for the Democrats to put a suffrage plank on the presidential platform. You know, and you think they couldn't vote it in themselves. They had to convince the men to share power.
This 6,000 square foot special exhibit shows that St. Louis women led the way to victory.
1910 to 1919 were really the years that the suffragists were active in St. Louis and really making things happen. And we put this timeline together to really highlight the growth of the movement.
There's nothing women can't accomplish when they do it together.
One of the things that they handed out when women registered were these little cards that they could hang in the window. And so we've blown it up and actually reproduced them.
They were determined and still are.
Every woman's story is important. Our vote is important. These women spent over 50 years fighting to give us the right to vote, and we really need to use that right that they got for us.
Happening now, on display through March 2022.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
I live in Richmond Heights, and we are surrounded by very cool architecture here. We have these houses that are decorated with bricks in a very beautiful fashion. They're always there. Every time I drive to work, I'm just surrounded by bricks everywhere. You go into one of these old houses, you find interior areas that have these red brick, and they could potentially be used for storing energy. It would be completely autonomous, off the grid in theory. This definitely was St. Louis trying to inspire us. What we do is that we look for inspiration in nature, and we try to find materials that are commonly regarded as waste or not useful chemical byproducts. We look at materials like the red pigment in bricks, which is known as rust, or iron corrosion, as a possible source of feedstock for doing chemical synthesis. And so the idea of using minerals for making materials is the essence of chemistry, and we were successful. We were able to change the red pigment in a brick, which is rust, into this plastic that we make in the lab. We make a very thin film of a plastic. It is nanofibrillar. A nanofibrillar coating on a brick increases the surface area. So when you build a house and you put your red bricks in a house, if they have our coating, which is blue, they have a much larger surface area. We take 2 bricks and we put these 2 bricks together. And when you put them together, you can apply a potential to one, like a battery, and you can make it a positive potential, and you can apply a negative potential to the other. We were able to store electricity in that polymer, in that plastic, an organic semiconductor. The name of the device that we have made is called a supercapacitor. It can be recharged very fast, and it can deliver the energy very fast. It only takes 13 minutes for us to recharge a wall of 50 bricks. Those 50 bricks can be recharged in 13 minutes with a solar cell, and they can power an emergency light that consumes 3 watts of energy for 50 minutes, 50. The intensity of the light would continue to decrease over time because that's one of the properties of supercapacitors, but that can be modulated, that can be fixed with some type of converter, electrical converter. And that wall can be recharged within 13 minutes to its maximum capacity and continue to produce electricity and continue to power that light. Let's say if you had 1,000 bricks, you would power a laptop. 1,000 bricks would do it. I see the potential for incorporating sensors. The coatings that we have produced allow us to also make devices on bricks that can sense the temperature in the house, carbon dioxide in the house, gases in the house. When you're cleaning the bathroom, what chemicals are you using? What is the pH of the environment? Are you being exposed to chemicals? We have a couple of challenges. We need to increase the amount of energy that we can store in the bricks. But we're working on that, and we can definitely achieve the goals that we want within the next year. We know we're going to be able to increase this energy by 50%. This is a universal strategy. It works on any kind of brick. So if you have an old home, it can be retrofitted. If you have a new home, you can go and buy the bricks. The solar cell would provide the energy, and the bricks would store the energy. They last about 30 years. If 30 years later you want to come back and recode it, or it should be accessible in case anything goes wrong and you need to go back and just look at the wires, what's going on with the wires. Other oxides of iron that you find in minerals are not just red. They can be yellow, green, black, or brown, and you can mix them so you can have bricks of different colors. This is not a commercial application yet. This is a proof of concept, but it demonstrates an intersection between architecture and chemistry, and brick had those properties. I knew that. What I did not expect is that it was going to be so good. I guess St. Louis was just telling us, go test this substrate. Then, once we got the substrate and we looked at the SDS of the substrate, so we looked at the safety data sheet. So where did this brick come from? We discovered that it came from St. Louis, the mud. We discovered that it's a company from here, and it was sold at a hardware store here, and we did the research here. What I would love is for this technology to stay here if it's possible. I would love for someone in St. Louis to be interested in keeping this technology here, because what we're encountering is a lot of interest from a lot of parts of the world in the technology. When you put all those things together, hindsight is 2020. Yeah, this definitely was St. Louis trying to inspire us.
Using dance to inspire people to vote, later on Spotlight.
The St. Louis Symphony is back on stage, but COVID-19 has forced them to perform the classics in a brand new way. After the pandemic forced the orchestra to cancel 59 performances, on October 15th, an upbeat audience returned to Powell Hall for the first downbeat here since March.
Well, it's very exciting to see them on stage as an orchestra, while even reduced. It's an amazing feeling.
Of Powell's 2,600 seats, only 80 will be sold for each performance, with only 40 of the orchestra's 90 musicians on stage at any one time. Seating will be socially distant, and everyone, including the musicians, must wear masks.
Right now, the winds and brass are behind a plexiglass, and all the string players wear a mask. Brass and wind players wear a mask when they are not playing, but understandably, when they have to play their wind or brass instrument, they have to remove their mask.
The pause, as it's been called, has been anything but. Even though live performances at Powell had to be halted, the St. Louis Symphony found creative ways to engage with audiences over the internet.
Tell us about what you're working on in these meetings at the piano with the soloists.
Some dramatic effect and timing.
The Symphony's popular lunch and learn get-togethers have gone virtual.
The lowest note is this one.
The orchestra also moved its educational mission to cyberspace.
So that's a huge difference.
St. Louis Symphony musicians have been appearing in a series of stirring videos called Songs of America. Others have been playing surprise concerts in parks and private concerts for healthcare workers and other frontline heroes.
I think it means a lot to them. They love the music, we love to play the music, and this is a way to keep the music alive and keep it going in the community. I think we've had over 120 requests to play music throughout the greater St. Louis area.
Some performances were given at private homes, and a few were surprises for people stuck at home.
We had a list of people in need and people who struggled with various health issues or situation, and we sent individual musicians to play for them, very short performances.
Through its imaginative use of video and pop-up performances, the Symphony reached more than 3 million people during the COVID intermission. And now that the orchestra is back at Powell, they are hoping for many happy returns.
It feels so good to be back. I wouldn't want it any other way. I need to be playing bass for people, or else a part of me is missing.
You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
The subject of children's books and Easter treats. Rabbits are fluffy, cuddly, and adorable. Unless they're feasting more on your garden than you are, then they're suddenly wild vermin pests that need to be taken care of. That contradiction, combined with thoughts of this 1980s Cadbury Caramel Bunny commercial, sparked Jasper Fforde's creativity.
Haven't you heard of Cadbury's Caramel?
You know, was this the only job she got? You know, as a rabbit? And I thought, no, she didn't.
You'll have to keep watching to find the unlikely, iconic place she goes. All of this led Forde to a narrative dare, the fantastical place he challenges himself to set a novel.
And when you've got a narrative dare and you can't let yourself off the hook, what it means is you sometimes really have to rummage very, very, very deeply in that authorial toolbox to try and find the tools to enable you to tell this very difficult story. And in that journey is sometimes some really exciting things happen.
It's how he started all 15 of his internationally popular absurdist fiction books. The narrative dare for The Constant Rabbit.
A family of rabbits moved next door to a little village in Middle England, and the villagers want them out.
But these rabbits are human-like with their own language, religion, and way of life. A new world generated by Forde's imagination.
I want to jump in and talk about this new novel of yours, The Constant Rabbits.
In 1965, 18 rabbits were anthropomorphized in this unprecedented event. They became 6 foot tall, they could walk, they could talk, they had reason, they had understanding, And everybody was amazed. It's like, whoa, wow, how did that happen? This is incredible, welcome, celebration, let's talk about this, about being a rabbit, how fantastic. But now it's like 55 years later, it's 2022, numbers of rabbits have grown, not dramatically, but they have grown, and all that celebration has turned to suspicion and fear and a little bit of hatred. And now the ruling government in the UK wants to move them, rehome them to a mega warren in Wales, something the rabbits are really not that keen about.
The way that you write and the similes and metaphors that you use and the cultural references, you can see yourself in the book's pages almost. Is that one of your hallmarks, that it has to feel like it's something that you could be a part of?
Writing fantasy books, I set them in the present day, and everything about the world seems very familiar, apart from this sort of one specific thing.
I want to go back to this idea, this idea of yours about the rabbits and this whole, because it's very creative. This was you thinking about a Cadbury caramel bunny, is that right?
Yes. During the 80s, this highly sexualized rabbit was used to sell chocolate. And I was getting to think about this Cadbury's caramel bunny. Was this the only job she got, as a rabbit? And I thought, no, she didn't. I reckon she was originally going to be in Pulp Fiction, Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. And there's this section in it called the Bonnie incident. You see, the Bonnie, you can see where I'm going with this already. And I thought maybe it was the bunny incident. And in fact, originally, this same rabbit that starred in these commercials, Rover's there because Tarantino said, I want a rabbit, and it was all about, this rabbit, the Bonnie incident. And then the studios got kind of cold feet and they went, I don't think we're ready to have a rabbit. And they said, you got to reshoot it. And he went, for God's sake. And he did. Reshoot it with a human. And it was really then me asking myself, okay, why didn't she get that job? Why did they pull her from the final cut? So quite often the way I think up ideas is I've got these little scenarios that sort of boil around in my head. And it's a logical progression of that, central scenario. And then it starts to sort of snowball and the ideas spread and darken and the book sort of slowly starts bubbling up.
Text Jasper to 31996 to watch the full interview and find out the meaning of the name Constant Rabbit, or download our Talking with Authors podcast.
HEC Media presents Talking with Authors, the podcast. Your favorite writers and genres, with diverse subjects and styles, with new podcasts dropping bi-weekly. Subscribe to Talking with Authors wherever you get your podcasts. It began in St. Louis with the presidential election 4 years ago. A new twist on the old adage, vote with your feet.
I'm so thrilled to see so many people here.
By the midterms in 2018, it had moved from sidewalk theater, seen by a few dozen, to an event at the Missouri History Museum attended by more than 1,000.
It's grown super fast.
It is called Dance the Vote, and they had hoped this election season to take their biggest leap yet.
And then along came the pandemic.
Joan Lipkin, founder of that uppity theater company, began Dance the Vote in 2016 as a way to get new voters to register and encourage registered voters to vote.
I thought, I love dance, and dance is universal, and it incorporates many, many different styles. And then we're not bound in text, spoken word, right, as much. Let's do something with dancers. And so I convened a meeting with some women that I knew, and we had our coffee, and we said, this is a historic moment. We're going to do something.
This year, however, a new historic moment has threatened Dance the Vote's ability to do anything in public.
V-O-T-E!
But if there is one thing dancers know how to do, it's pivot.
We thank you for tuning in to Dance the Vote. Enjoy.
This year, Dance the Vote has gone virtual, with once-a-week episodes featuring 2 recorded performances, a brassy new approach that comes with a silver lining.
When we did it before, we were basically limited to local artists. But this also gives us an opportunity to have artists from all over the country.
Be safe, but be sure to vote.
Our focus has expanded, not just the voting, because that is super important, but to include all the things that are affected by the power of voting.
In partnership with Webster University, this year's virtual Dance the Vote also includes a contest for college students with cash prizes. The topic is Make Good Trouble, Why John Lewis Inspires Me to Vote. Entries can be in any form of media, things like graphics, photos, written entries, and short videos.
I feel like being a leader is being someone who can think about others before themselves.
We're losing some of our heroes, and when we lose our heroes like John Lewis, when we lose Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we also lose some of our history, unless we find creative ways to continue to keep it alive.
I say your vote is your voice. If you don't vote, you really are letting someone else make a decision for you. I had these refrigerator magnets made up, and it says, bad politicians are elected by good people who don't vote.
This year, in light of the renewed push for social justice, Dance the Vote has made a special effort to emphasize work created by artists of color.
Can I vote some other way?
They are also producing videos to address the confusion surrounding absentee and mail-in voting.
I'm Naomi, I'm blind, and I can't wait to vote.
They have a video that speaks to the needs of disabled voters.
We all count, así es que...
Dance the Vote is also using its virtual platform to urge people to participate in the 2020 census. Thanks to the pandemic, Dance the Vote is no longer the same old song and dance. Do you think that this is going to be the way you may do things in the future?
There is nothing like people gathering in a physical space, a real concrete physical space together. I think that a lot of us might be looking at a hybrid, that hopefully when we get to gather together in real spaces, we'll be able to continue to do that kind of live work.
But until then, this will have to do.
But until then, this will have to do, and I try to keep the glass half full. Because I got to be looking at that glass. I got to be drinking from that glass, and I'd rather know that there's something in the glass.
I love it!
Next week, a creative outlet helping veterans share their experiences to help deal with stress. Plus, a 100-year-old Army vet who served in the all-black 351st Artillery Unit. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.